What's up YouTube, and welcome to my pickups video for the month of October 2025. Did some travel this month. At the very beginning of the month I had a work trip to Branson, Missouri. There are no game stores in Branson, unfortunately, but there are some in the Springfield area that are on the way, and so I hit a few of those stores. And then the middle of the month was my return trip, as typical, to go to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in Portland, Oregon. So got a few things there. A little bit different environment there this year than I thought, I guess from prior years. I think some of it might be just due to kind of the state of the economy and just the way people are spending. It was bigger than ever, I will say that, as far as like the amount of vendors and stuff that was going on there and panels and things like that. Everything felt like it was expanded this year. But the foot traffic felt a little bit lower. And so I don't know just kind of what that says about the industry. Also, just inventory at the vendors was a little bit lower than what I'm accustomed to. There's more vendors there, but like the stuff they had at their actual booths was a little bit less than usual. That being said, I found a Grail that I've been wanting for a really long time, so rather than buying a whole bunch of little things, I bought one big thing and then a couple other things at the con. So we'll get into some of the stuff I got this month. First thing, I got something for the Sega Dreamcast, and that's not very common because I have a full Sega Dreamcast US set, and I pretty much have most of the imports that I want. However, and I'm not a fan of repros, I bought a fan translation repro, whatever you want to call it, for Dolphin Blue. This is a really fun Metal Slug-like run-and-gun shooter that was originally for the Atomiswave arcade hardware, which is very close to the Naomi arcade hardware, which is also very close to the Dreamcast. The sad thing about this game is it never got a home release on anything, and I thought it was pretty cool that somebody found a way to make the Atomiswave version function on a Dreamcast. Very fun game, very colorful, should have been a bigger hit. I just think that the Atomiswave was kind of DOA as far as arcade hardware. And as far as the quality of this repro, I'm not going to shout out the vendor, but I would say it's very high quality. They included a spine card, there's like just nice color on the disc, and just good artwork as far as like a imaginary game that never actually got a home release. That being said, the actual game itself is just a straight rip of the arcade board, so there isn't even like a menu at the beginning. For the home version, there's no pause button functionality. It is just a straight up arcade game on a disc. So that being said, I had a lot of fun with it. I played it all the way through, and it was kind of interesting because I wanted to pause it a couple times, and I'm like, oh crap, it's just like the arcade. I can't pause. So very fun game, and if you like Metal Slug, you definitely owe it to yourself to check this game out. I wish it had a true home release. I would certainly spend the money on that. But it is kind of neat that somebody decided to, go ahead and make this version of it for the Dreamcast. Another game I found just kind of in my travels. This is one that I already had, but I didn't have it truly complete until now. And so I got an upgrade for the Dark Spire on the DS, which is kind of an interesting first-person game by Success. And then Atlas brought it out here in the US. I had it complete in the box, but the outer cardboard box that this one comes with is a little bit fatter, and it comes with a soundtrack CD with this as well. So decided to sell off my other copy. I got this for less than I was able to sell off the other one for, so it was worth the upgrade. And kind of a unique entry from the DS that you don't really hear a whole lot about. So maybe because the artwork is just so completely bland. I can't say that that would have sold me on this game when it first came out. So interesting art style to the game, kind of cel-shaded, interesting just gameplay, but yeah, just something you don't see too often for the DS. Let's get into a couple things I got at the con. So one of the things I found on the first night walking around was a vendor that had a whole bunch of PC Engine Japanese imports. A lot of good stuff you don't typically see, and one game caught my eye because I'd heard about this game quite a bit. I've never played it, and I decided that I would go for it. So I went back the next day and got it from the vendor, and it is Fawcett Amour, which is an action platformer type game with this female star character. It's kind of Alice-y in a way, I guess would be the best way to put it, but it also has some like Ghosts and Goblins type things going on where like your armor breaks off if you get hit, and then you're running around in your panties, which I'm sure that appealed to a large Japanese audience. But this game is also very common to see in repro form. It seems like if you go on eBay and you look up this game, there's more repros than actual copies of it. This one is definitely a genuine copy, so it's nice to have it. And a cool game for the CD-ROM system that you don't see too often. So nice to have this. The gameplay is okay. I guess I was expecting a little bit more from it. It's a little bit clunky. It does also have some like grappling hook type gameplay elements to it, which make it a little bit interesting. It's just a little bit light, I guess would be the best way to put it. Not definitely an all-time classic, and I can kind of see why it got skipped over to come to the US, but worth picking up, and like I said, kind of a neat impulse purchase from the con. Alright, well let's get to the big title. So this was what took up the bulk of my gaming budget for the month, and probably several months. I have wanted this game for years. Even back in the day when I was buying games for Sega CD, I never found this game cheap, so I didn't feel so bad paying up the money that it goes for today. And this copy is mega clean and probably one of the nicest ones I've ever seen. And that is Kyo Flying Squadron, which is pretty much the crown jewel of the US Sega CD library. It is a very interesting shooter. It is incredibly Japanese in nature. It has cool cutscenes and things like that. I'm very surprised we got this game in the US. It seems like at the time, you know, animes type shooters and things like that really weren't a big thing here, at least especially with full cutscenes and things like that. So it would have very limited appeal, but it is definitely up my alley. The gameplay is okay. I mean, it's a horizontal shooter, which is not my favorite style. Has some interesting difficulty level settings that you can play around with and things like that. But it is very, very difficult to find, and this was a late release, obviously, for the Sega CD and its limited lifespan. So, yeah, didn't quite spend as much on this as I spent on my Grail at the con last year, but it seems to be an odd little recurring thing. It's like, suddenly I'm buying these games that I've wanted for my whole life, you know, at the con when they're staring me in the face. So things like this you don't just typically see in a game store, and it just does feel like something a little bit special when you get to find something like this. And then of course you don't have to deal with shipping it and paying tax and all that kind of stuff because you're buying it in person. So very happy to have this on off my list. It gets me to a weird place with my Sega CD library because I have, I don't know, maybe 40 to 50% of the library, but I have like all the good titles now that I have this. This was like the one big hole. And honestly, the rest of the collection, if I go for it, is like a lot of the junk titles. And I'm just trying to decide, do I really want to eat up this much shelf space with these cases being so huge to go for the complete set? But honestly, I've pretty much mastered all the other rare and hard to find and fun titles that I want for the system. The other thing I think it'd be kind of cool to go for Sega CD is just like the paper box subset. I have about half of those, but they are so condition sensitive. I've been so picky when I'm looking around in the wild, and I've passed on a lot of those games when I find them. So we'll see if this reinvigorates my interest in going for a full Sega CD set. I could certainly do it, I think, at this point, now that I have this off my list and I have some of the other big titles. But it is a cool system to collect for, and the games are getting more more common in the wild, that's for sure. So anyways, I'm rambling. Very happy to have this, and that was obviously the big budget buster for my Portland Con experience. Another cool thing that happened this month is one of my local friends, Brian, was really nice and hooked me up with a box of about 80 Nintendo sleeves, the original black sleeves that came with the games. And that actually got me enough that I have a complete set of these for all of my games for the NES collection. So very happy to have that crossed off the list. I tend to chase these when I'm out and about. You know, if I find a bundle of 5 of them, I was buying them, things like that. Just really cool to get a whole bunch of them at once and get all my games in the proper black sleeves. So that is one collecting goal that I have accomplished this month. Another thing that I really like to get at the Portland Con is NES manuals. I'm trying to go for the full set of NES manuals, and I'm about 70 away to get the full set. This year it was very dry. There was not a whole lot of stuff there in general. There were vendors selling manuals, which is always cool, but there just really wasn't a whole lot for NES this year. So even stuff like that's drying up that I used to find very plentifully at the con. But I did get a big one off my list. This one also wasn't cheap, but it is for Casino Kid 2, which is a very rare late title for the system. Very weird concept that this came out in the US as well. I mean, casinos and kids. Does anything seem a little bit odd about that combination? Yes, it probably made sense in a Japanese sense, but you know, the fact that Nintendo licensed the series Part 1 and 2 is a little bit weird, considering that kids aren't legal to gamble in the US, at least in most places I would know in the world as well. That also got me looking at other NES manuals on my want list. I try to buy these in person, but I found a vendor on eBay that was actually selling 2 of the unlicensed manuals that I needed, and decided to go ahead and get them because he was willing to let me bundle them together for shipping, and I got a good price on these. So I got Trolls on Treasure Island, which is one of the American Video Entertainment unlicensed titles, but it does have the license of the Trolls. And so if you remember these stupid toys that were popular for like a half a minute in the late 80s, they made a video game out of them for some reason. So yeah, that was kind of one of the weird titles of the NES library. And then the other one I got is Mermaids of Atlantis, The Riddle of the Magic Bubble, which is a puzzle game by American Video Entertainment as well. This one's kind of notorious because this is like the censored version, and then you have the porn version of this game, which is Bubble Bath Babes, which is one of the Panesian unlicensed titles that is also very expensive and hard to find for the system. So nice to get this one. It's funny, I found the box for this like maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, so now this is actually complete. So that was kind of a weird title that you don't see too often. This was one of the later American Video Entertainment releases, and so you just don't see this one too much. One other very cool manual I got while I was out in Portland, this didn't come from the con, this actually came from one of the game stores in Portland, was Sorcerer's Kingdom for the Genesis, and this is a really nice copy of this manual. I've had this game boxed for probably 20 years and could never find just this manual, and I was determined that I wasn't going to buy it complete and sell off my box copy. I decided to put it together the right way, so very happy to have this. This is one of the, I don't know, lesser RPGs I would say for the system, but kind of a neat manual. It's pretty fat, has a lot of detail to it that you didn't typically see in manuals at the time for Genesis, so very happy to get this. Kind of weird artwork on the cover. Looks like he's hang gliding more so than I don't know what's actually going on there. It's very weird. And then another thing I got NES as far as an upgrade was I was out traveling for my work trip this month, and I stopped at a game store on the way home, and they were selling just the box only for Clash at Demon Head for NES. So I was very happy to grab this because I actually do like this game quite a bit, and I realized I didn't have the box for it. So this one is now complete. I've had the manual for this one for some time. Very odd artwork on this one. There's a lot going on, so I'll let you kind of process that one for yourself. But if you haven't played this one, it's worth checking out. It's a pretty weird game for the NES. The other thing I like to find at the Portland Con is magazines, and I pretty much struck out there too. There were just a few vendors selling magazines, mostly Nintendo Powers, which I'm not going for. But as far as like the weird type stuff that I want, there just really wasn't a whole lot there. I did get an issue of EGM that was really cool though at the con, and I was actually surprised I didn't have this one. But this was like right before I started subscribing as a teenager in the 90s, and so this is the very cool cover for Final Fantasy VII. This was like well before the game actually released, and so it was kind of just like the hype train of when people were just really waiting to see this game come out. But I think the artwork of Cloud is really cool on the cover of this. So since they needed to pad this article or this magazine with something about Final Fantasy VII, they went to Squaresoft of America and talked to a couple of the translators that were working on the game in progress. And honestly, like, the insight is so weak. I mean, they talked to one of the translators and, you know, they're just like, so what, you know, what is it like translating the Final Fantasy universe to the PS1? And like, what does that mean? Well, some of the words in Japanese games don't make sense if you use them, if you translate them directly. So my job is to translate them in a way that makes sense. Hard-hitting content we got out of this one, I can tell you that. So anyway, cool cover, not so much on the actual content itself. And then while I was on my work trip, the game store I hit also had some issues of a weird magazine, so I was happy to grab these. This is Electronic Games magazine from like 92 and 93. I got a few issues of it. Very strange magazine. I think they were friendly with EGM. I don't know if it was the same publisher, but like there didn't seem to be a competition with this one. But it was more serious in tone, kind of more like a video games and computer entertainment. And I would say it was very heavy on computer games. There's a lot just PC and Apple type games covered in these, but they did obviously cover console stuff too. It's also weird that they had like industry stuff like this on the cover. So like, who cares about Tom Kalinske of Sega? Like, why would you put him on the cover of a magazine? That doesn't seem like a kind of thing that's going to sell at the newsstand. So a little bit different than your average gaming magazine of the 90s. These were okay to read, but nothing like amazing. So I don't know if I'm going to get more of these or not. The next issue was a little bit later. This is like a 93 issue. They were kind of previewing the PS1 and Saturn when they were first coming out, talking about all the consoles that were on the market in the crazy era of this time where like everything was coming out. And one of these issues, I can't remember if it was this one or one of the other ones, had an interesting article about a Blockbuster video concept I'd never heard of called Block Party. And it was a city block, urban type entertainment center that was like kind of their take on Dave & Buster's, but even bigger. and it had, you know, like a adult ball pit. There were like arcade games, pinball games, obviously. There was a virtual reality section, a restaurant. They opened it in 2 test markets, Indianapolis and Albuquerque, of all places. I found some stuff on Google about those 2 locations. I obviously never went to them back in the day, so if you did, I'd love to hear your take on those. But they failed miserably. They lasted for a few years. I think one of them rebranded to something else, and then they're both closed now. So Block Party never got off the ground, and Blockbuster's multiple ventures didn't always lead to success. So anyway, another issue of electronic games, and then this is the last issue I grabbed, which I think is another one from like 93 or 94. This one, I don't know, they were just a random cover about cyberspace or whatever, which I guess made sense at the time. So, like I said, these were okay, nothing amazing, probably not going to chase down more, but I like reading weird magazines like that of the era and stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path. So, that about does it for the month. Like I said, fun time at the con, fun time in Portland as always. Just a little bit weirder environment than I'm accustomed to with some of the things going on. I will say the game stores out there too just felt a little bit more picked over this year than in the past, but just kind of seems to be the state of things, like everything's just running dry right now. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.